Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I have had a little break from recording the podcast as there has been quite a lot going on this year. We've been homeschooling 3 kids, moving house, my mother breaking her hip and ending up in hospital. So it's all been happening. But I've really missed the podcast and it is great to be back. And today I have a wonderful guest for you. So I promise that it will be worth the wait. I would love to introduce you to Fi Mims from Fi Mims Photography. Fi is a personal brand photographer and has worked with some very inspiring business owners and professionals over the years to help them build their personal brand through incredible photography. If you haven't seen her images, then you need to jump online and see what this lady is capable of. Good brand photography is just so important for business owners to attract the right clients and for professionals to attract the right employers. So today, Fi is going to share her own career story and explain how she now helps others to propel their career through brand photography. Welcome, Fi. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Leah, and thank you for such a great intro.
I made you sound really good, didn't I?
You did. I might have to get you to send that one to me.
So, Fi, I don't know if you've listened to any of my episodes, but I always do like to start at the beginning. I would love you to share your story and your own career story about what you did after university and how you first came to be interested in photography.
Yeah, sure. I'll try and make it just the interesting or important bits so it doesn't drag on for too long. I think what I feel is maybe different about me and my story is I think with a lot of photographers, they might grow up with a camera in hand or, a box brownie gets handed down from the grandpa. But I came to photography a little bit later and I was one of those kids or young adults that didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just kept thinking, when I get to the next stage of my education, I'll work it out. So, high school, I'll find out. Didn't find out. I went to university and studied Japanese and psychology. Still didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then following university, I went overseas to London for a couple of years, having a little bit of fun. And was really while I was there that I discovered my passion, I suppose, for photography. I took a lot of snaps at the time, nothing serious, but there was a particular moment there where I took myself off to the National Portrait Gallery and I was walking around this gallery and I will never forget looking at these large-scale photographic portraits on the wall. And that was the first time I just had this voice in my head saying, that's what I want to do. So that was the first moment I felt like it was something that I would, like a career path I would like to follow. But having said that, it took me a few years to actually act on it because I know we're probably going to talk about this soon, but I just had those voices in my head going, who are you to be a photographer? Like I had no real experience. I didn't feel like I came from a creative family or background. I didn't feel like it would be seen even as a real job from, I've got a very supportive family, but I knew photography, wouldn't necessarily be what my parents thought would be a proper career. And I just didn't really feel confident to go for it. So it took me a few years to actually gather the courage to actually go and follow my dream, really, which I eventually did.
And thank goodness for that. And so what did that mean? Did you go out and to teach yourself photography or did you go and enroll in a course? What were your next steps from there?
So I came back from overseas and I got a job, you'd call it a corporate job, which I was actually in for 7 years, but sort of probably a few years into that job, I was still thinking about the photography and I was talking about it a lot, but not doing anything. And eventually a guy I was dating for a while, he just got sick of it and he was like, would you just go and do something? And he literally handed me a brochure for a short course at the Melbourne Camera Club, which I took myself off and did. And that was just like a 10-week course. And loved it. So I'm like, well, this is, so far so good. And from there, I enrolled in, there was a private college in Melbourne back then, which is no longer around, but it was a 2-year course. Took out my first ever loan for $6,000 to do. I signed up for a 2-year course, but I actually only ended up doing the first year, which was all based around the basics of photography, and it was more around the portraiture side of things and natural light. The second year, they focused on commercial photography, which I didn't really feel I wanted to do. So I ended up leaving after the first year, but I worked for one of the tutors who had a wedding photography studio. So I worked part-time for her, as well as working part-time in other jobs at that stage. And that was great. So that was my foot in the door, and that led on to me photographing my own weddings, which I did for the first 10 years of my career, which I loved.
Right. So you started off doing weddings. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did. And I think, it's probably, I think I can say it's quite common for photographers, because it's an easy side hustle to do while you still have a full-time job. They are, a lot of people, when I used to tell them I was a wedding photographer, the first question was always, oh my God, that must be so hard, and you must get so many bridezillas. And, obviously the nerves that come with holding someone's memories of the best day of their lives in your hands. But I absolutely loved it. As a photographer, you've just got to have your processes in check, so that, you're running 2 cards, you've got 2 cameras in case one breaks down. And, once you've got your systems right, you can go out there and enjoy the day. And I absolutely loved it, because I was always a pretty natural, candid photographer. So I picked up clients that were very natural, relaxed, lovely couples. And of course, once you start with a certain type of clientele, the word of mouth spreads to the same type. So they were just great days. I absolutely loved it. And I think that's where I really honed my skills of capturing moments and capturing people, and also being able to direct people.
So your business has now evolved into more personal brand photography. When did you make that transition?
It's probably, so I've been a photographer, I think it's about 18 years now. And I would say, so I did weddings for 10 years, and then I gave birth to twins, and I thought it's not going to work anymore. So I slowly transitioned out of weddings. I basically just stopped marketing them. So it probably took about 5 years to completely stop, because every year I photographed less weddings, and at the same time I started building up a more business portfolio. So back then I started doing headshots. Personal branding wasn't really talked about then, but early on in that phase, I was working with a coach for a few months, and she said to me, Fi, I feel like women are going to start needing photos for their businesses. I think that's something you should look at. Needless to say, she's a very insightful coach and woman. And of course, personal branding exploded after a few years. But I went out and, I did start photographing women, and very quickly realised that I loved it. I think it had all the elements of wedding photography and capturing people that I loved. And as a woman in business, I could really relate to women in terms of having to be in front of the camera, having to show up for their business. So, I've sort of been on that path for the last 8 years now, slowly building.
And tell us, when you first started the business, like I've been talking to a lot of people lately about imposter syndrome and how you overcome those feelings of everyone else has been doing photography longer than me. Why would they choose me as their photographer? Did you ever feel like that? And if so, how did you overcome those feelings?
Oh, so much, Leah. You have no idea. And it's something I've worked on a lot over the years. And don't laugh, but I think it was years before I could even, if someone said to me, what do you do? I used to struggle even just saying I'm a photographer. I would say things like, I take photos. And I think, you look back and you think it's silly, but I think because even though I went to college for a year, I still felt largely self-taught. I went out fairly quickly after working for my tutor in her wedding studio. I was pretty quick to move on from that and start my own business, because I've always been stubbornly independent and love doing things myself. So I moved on pretty quickly, and therefore taught myself a lot in terms of, the photography and the business. And I think because I was self-taught, part of me felt like I wasn't professional enough. Obviously working from home as well, sometimes in your head you can tell yourself, I'm not professional because I don't have a studio. But I think for me it was also just a lot about confidence. And yes, that comparison you can do to yourself. And a lot of us in business are high achievers, and I'm definitely one of those. I'm a perfectionist. So for years I spent way too much time comparing myself to others, which I suppose in order to get over that, I've done things like invest in coaches, which I think is really important. I think a lot of business is mindset. So if you are struggling with those aspects, then find someone to work with. I've worked on it myself a lot as well, because I've always recognised I've had those issues. Surrounded myself with people that, are my cheerleaders and my supporters, and that inspire me. And you know what? My husband as well, he is an absolute rock for me. He's been very supportive. And I think having someone, your inner circle, people that you can talk to that continually lift you up, that's really helped as well on those days when it's really, left me feeling flat.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. And I know you have an amazing group of women around you to support you. Photography, like any other sort of creative career, often students who are thinking of those careers, their parents will say, oh no, don't do that. You'll never make a living. You won't be able to earn a good income. I mean, what do you feel are the biggest challenges for photographers in the industry?
Probably the first one that comes to mind is how competitive the industry is. I know most industries are competitive, but, it is one of those industries where you don't need to go out and get a certification. You don't need to go through a course or go to university. So it's very easy for anyone to be a photographer. And even in terms of personal branding, because that is now such a popular genre, anyone who's a wedding photographer or a food photographer or an architectural photographer, many of them now also say, well, I'm a personal branding photographer too. So it is very competitive. So I think that is by far the hardest thing to overcome, because in order to be successful, you have to make a name for yourself and stand out. Because you're going to always look around and there's always going to be brilliant photographers, some that are better than you, but some that aren't as good as you. And you have to find your own niche. So definitely competition and standing out. And when starting out, I would say the other challenge is charging appropriately. And I suppose like anything, when we're starting out and we feel like we're a little bit of a beginner, we can feel like we can't charge too much. And I think that's okay to an extent when you're starting out. I mean, I did my absolute fair share of free work and contra, and I did a lot of it quite badly. Probably if I went back and had my time again, I'd do it differently. Not that I wouldn't do it, but I would probably be more strategic about it, and I would be more professional about it in terms of making sure it was a give-give situation. I think a lot of times photographers can fall into a give and get nothing in return situation except a lot of promises. And also, I suppose, just in terms of the industry in general, if there's a lot of people out there not charging a lot, it can drag the entire industry down. And then a lot of people in the photography industry are left not making much money and not being able to charge. So I think they're the big challenges.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I imagine that, your time at the event or at the wedding is not even comparable to the time after the event with the editing and getting all the photos ready to be sent out. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people, there's some people that maybe perceive that when we went to digital photography, it became easier for photographers because you didn't have to pay for all the film costs. And That's true, but we spent all those costs that went into processing films were suddenly transferred into, our time and our labour, because now we spend hours and hours at our computer, unless we can outsource, which is more expensive than processing films. So I think you have to be very good at explaining to your customers how much time goes into your work. And also, like any business, it's not just your time on the day, but it's the years of experience you've had. You might have, even if you're not paying for a studio, you still are paying for business costs, which you can't expect people to understand that. So I think you have to be well aware of your own costs and put a value on your time, and make sure you can also explain that to your customers so that they understand what they're getting.
What other advice would you have for a young person who might be out thinking about photography as a career?
Go for it. I think it's okay to be a beginner. And I think if I had my time again, I would probably spend more time trying to learn off others. I think, as I mentioned, I moved on pretty quickly and went into business for myself. But I sometimes think back and think, I could have learned a lot more and a lot more quickly if I had stayed working for others. So definitely don't be scared to go and learn off others, even if that means, giving up your time, but you're getting something great in return. The other thing I would say is definitely invest in business skills, because it's not enough to be a great photographer. There are many great photographers out there that if they don't know how to run a business or sell themselves, they're not successful. They end up just having to go back and do different work. So I think it's really important to obviously know how to run a business, so that it is a business. It doesn't stay as a hobby or a side hustle where you end up spending far too many hours.
And it seems, from what I can see, the photographers out there that are doing well are also showing up on social media. They're actively promoting themselves and their services to become better known in the industry. Do you think that's equally important?
Absolutely. And that comes back to branding, I suppose, which I'm a bit obsessed with, as you know. But I think to be successful in business these days, you have to be visible as possible. It's all about showing up, whether that's, I think social media is the best form of doing that. And I think it would be very hard to have a business without social media these days. You don't have to be on all platforms, but you have to choose one or two and do them really well. And I know from the women I work with and my clients that the more they show up, the more opportunity they are giving people to hear about them and connect with them. And these days it's all about connecting with your audience, because how are people going to know whether to talk to you or 50 other wedding or portrait or food photographers in the industry? They need a reason to connect with you over and above liking your images. They want to know who's the person behind the brand, why do they love their work, what's different about them. And I think if you're not, you can't just build a beautiful website and expect people to come and find you anymore. It doesn't work like that. Even word of mouth, like I used to, my business ran on word of mouth for 10 years easily, but you can't rely on just that anymore.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do now, and the sort of people that you work with, and how you help them with their personal brand by using these great photos, how that can help them be more successful?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose having worked with mostly women, I should say, I photograph men and I do corporate photography as well, but I do market to women because that's my niche, female entrepreneurs. Having worked with them for many years, I spend a lot of time talking to them, and I realized that a lot of them, they would come and get the shoots done and have these beautiful images, but they would still struggle with showing up once, walking away from that shoot. It might be that they didn't have the confidence to show up. In a lot of cases, I think particularly with social media, people still struggle with what to say, like what am I going to talk about? People don't like talking about themselves. And all the different ways they can use their images, but also show up in other ways. So an idea I had for a long time, which I created last year, was a membership for women in business called Shine. And the main pillars of that is it's all about personal branding, marketing, and mindset. So I think those three things are extremely important in business. And obviously my main skill is in visual branding. So we talk about that, but I also have other speakers come in and talk about different things that help the women grow successful businesses. But it's sort of teaching them how to show up in an authentic way. So how to create content that will help your audience, how to connect with them, how to do things like get on video and speak to an audience, because, you know, that's quite challenging for many people. And because I think personal branding it's just our biggest asset, because it is the only way we can really stand out and be different to the person next to us. So, you know, there's a lot of things involved in personal branding. You've got your tangibles, like your visuals, which is your images and your fonts and your design elements and those different type of things. But then you've got your foundations, I call them, which is like, you know, what's the purpose behind what you do? What really drives you in your business? What are your values? Because I think values matter to people these days in terms of, you know, who they choose to purchase from or what products they like to buy. You know, what's the messaging behind your brand? What do you want? What problems are you solving? And what's the value you're giving people? So I'm really enjoying transitioning a little bit. I'll always be a photographer, but sort of adding that part of my business to what I do based on all my experience and just wanting to help my clients and women in a bigger way, because I know that it's not just about the images. There's a lot of other work that needs to be done in order to really show up.
Great. That sounds fantastic, Fi. And so how can people communicate what they're about through these images? What are some examples of how people have done that?
Yeah, great question. I think you have to have a bit of an idea of, you know, we talk about brand personality. So, you know, if your brand was a person, what would you be like? What would she or he be like? So when I do my shoots with my clients, we look at, you know, who they work with, what their brand personality is like, if they already have a bit of a style in terms of colours and look and feel. And we go out and we try and find locations that work with that. You know, what would match your brand in terms of, you know, you're not going to be, if you're a corporate, you're not going to be out in a styled house that looks like a Hamptons property, for example. So, you know, what location would match your brand? What sort of outfits do you want to wear? Because I think you could do a whole podcast with my friend Nick Vine on outfits and how to show up. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, what are the outfits you want to wear that show different sides of your personality, that help position you as you want to be positioned and seen. You know, even things down to props, because I think images are a great way to tell stories. So the images you create for your business have to tell your audience a story about who you are, but also how you help people. And I think sometimes that can be really easy for product-based businesses. And for service-based businesses, like I obviously work with a lot of coaches and consultants, that can feel quite hard. But, you know, if you're a coach, obviously for yourself, Leah, you know, you help people find their careers. And so it would be not just photos of you, but it would be photos of you working with your clients, photos of people finding successful jobs. You know, what does that look like, and how do we capture that in images? And capturing different parts of, you know, the process you go through with your images, with your clients, not your images. And how does that look? You know, where do you work? What's a typical day for you? What does your office look like? And also injecting your personality into it as well. Like, you know, if you got a pet, bring your pet to the shoot.
I have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I must admit, I've always found, being a service-based business, I've always found preparing for a shoot quite difficult, because I work with males and females from about 16 years old to people in their late 50s, even early 60s. So yeah, it's like, how do I appeal to such a wide range of people across all different industries? So I must admit, I think my only prop last time was my border collie, and yeah, maybe a glass of champagne.
And I think, well, they're two things that are really great, that people can look at that and go, well, I love champagne too, and I'm a dog lover. People love pet photos. They sometimes get the most views. It's crazy. But I think you're right, because when you're a service-based business, you are really selling yourself. So, a lot of the images have to be you, but the beauty of personal branding is you can take such a variety of images now. It's not just that old traditional headshot that we used to think was all we could do. Now there's lifestyle images, and your face doesn't have to be in all of them, and there's so much beautiful scope now for what you can do and the stories you can tell, which I love. One thing I often do with my clients that are service-based is capture them working with their clients, because you want people to look at the images and be able to picture themselves working with you as well. And that's a really nice way to do that.
Yeah, and look, I know from looking at the gallery on your website, Fi, that you are very creative when it comes to different locations and different props. So you're definitely the lady to go to. And speaking of that, how would someone go about choosing a photographer? What will be the things that they would need to consider if they do want to engage a photographer for personal branding?
Yeah, another great question. I think you have to love their images, or, at least connect with their images. That's the first thing. But I think to work with any photographer, you should definitely speak to them before you book them, because you want to feel like you've got rapport with them. I remember at college, one of our tutors said to us, photography is 10% photographic skills, technical skills, and 90% people skills. And it's so true, because obviously we need to be technically skilled at what we do, but you can't take a good photo without being able to connect with someone in front of the camera. So I think you need to pick a few photographers you like and chat with them, or even if it's just the first one, you have to make sure that you're comfortable with them on the phone and you have a bit of rapport, so that you know that on the day they'll be able to make you feel comfortable too. And then after those two, probably the third thing would be just making sure they go through a little bit of a pre-shoot process. I think from clients I've photographed that have had bad experiences, 9 times out of 10, it's because the photographer hasn't really talked to them before the day to find out, what do they like? What do they need? What are they going to be using the images for? What is whether it's just personal brand or their personality, what are they about? And they've just turned up on the day and they might have captured a stack of shots, but not the shots that person wanted, not shots that are usable. And I also have had feedback from clients that have had bad experiences where they people haven't directed them in front of the camera. And I think if you're working with people, I call us normal people that, we're the non-models, which is most of us, and that's who I work with. We're all just regular people. No one feels comfortable in front of the camera. If they do, it's rare. You have to direct them. So make sure they will know how to direct you in front of the camera, because that's key as well, to getting a good shot.
And from personal experience, it's not as easy as it looks.
No, it's not. And, those photos that look natural, occasionally someone will rock up to me and work with me that is really natural in front of the camera and confident, and they can just pull out all these poses. But 99% of people do not know how to stand in front of the camera. They suddenly feel awkward. So you have to, where do they put their hands? How are they standing? How is the light hitting them? Do they look their best? Have they got a double chin showing? Everything, you have to direct them and then get the timing right, so that when someone looks at that photo, they think, oh, she's so natural in front of the camera.
Yeah,
which, that doesn't help some of us, because we look at all the photos out there and go, oh, why is it so easy for them? Well, it's actually not. They've probably just worked with a really good photographer that knows how to direct.
See, I know that often people have some photos taken to present how they want to be in the future, or what they're wanting to do with their career in terms of next steps. Do you have a great client success story that you can share with us?
Yes, there's one in particular that comes to mind, and she's not a business owner, but she was actually someone who worked in corporate, and she came to me a couple of years ago for a personal branding shoot, and she said that she had a goal to land a role as a CEO in a business, and she knew that she needed to build her confidence up and believe in herself, and she wanted to create some images that captured her as she saw herself in that role. So we did a beautiful branding shoot for her. She had these great images, and I got an email from her, I think it was about 3 months later, saying she'd landed that role. I get teary every time I talk about it. She sent me this beautiful email saying, you know, how the images really helped her, and that she would look at those images to remind herself of what she wanted and the CEO that she could be. And then she landed the role, and I still see her on LinkedIn popping up, you know, in this role, just absolutely rocking it. And I think it's just a really nice example of how investing in your brand can really, sometimes I say to people, I don't sell images, I sell confidence, because I think creating that vision for yourself can really help build your confidence.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know that, I mean, we work with clients all the time to rewrite their LinkedIn profiles so that they feel more confident articulating what they're good at, and so that if a recruiter or an employer looks at their LinkedIn, and sometimes we'll do that, and then they've still got this dreadful photo that has terrible lighting, maybe sunglasses on the head, and no, you have to update the photo as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think if people don't have photos that they're proud of, they will not post them online. And that's, you know, a lot of people hold back from investing in a professional photographer because they feel awkward in front of the camera. And I mean, I know it's easy for me to say, but I think it's so crazy, because it's like, why wouldn't you invest in someone that's going to create images that you love? And again, I know from my clients that when they've got this beautiful library of images, it's so much easier to show up on social media, because they're not having to search for a photo they like. They haven't got 3 to choose from. They might have 30 or 200. Yeah, and it's like a website. I always say, if you've got a website that you're not happy with, you're not going to send it out to people. And it's the same with your images. So you got to use everything you can.
Yeah, totally agree. Whether it's the logo, your colors, your website, your photos, it definitely helps you sell your business more when you are proud of how it all looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Fi, if someone out there is keen to work with you, what are the options for working with you, and how would they find you?
Finding me is pretty easy, because I am pretty much Fi Mims Photography everywhere. The only mistake people often do is they put 2 M's in my second name. I'm MIMS, but I think whatever you put, you find me online. So my website is fimimsphotography.com. Instagram is @FiMimsPhotography. Same on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So I'm pretty consistent across all of my online channels. And in terms of working with me, obviously photography is where most of my clients, or how most of my clients find me and work with me. I have different packages to pay depending on if people need a few photos. For example, if you're in corporate and you just need some profile images but not a whole image library, as opposed to maybe you're an online entrepreneur that, you know, has a lot of services, online courses, etc., and obviously a large social presence on social media, they might want a larger library. So I have a variety of packages there. And obviously the membership is the other one, which, sorry for the guys listening, it is just for women. But that's for if you're a female in business that, you know, wants to become part of a community that will help you build your confidence and your personal brand and your business as a result. That's, you know, something people can check out as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Fi, for coming on the show. It's been really interesting to hear your own story, but there's also such great advice there for people who do want to improve their own personal brand online. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, for me too, Leah. Thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Fi. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.